To most people, Ivy Thompson was invisible. She spent her days delivering pizzas across the city, weaving through traffic on her old scooter, her uniform smelling faintly of flour and cheese. Customers rarely looked her in the eye. Some didn't even bother to say thank you. But Ivy didn't mind, or at least that's what she told herself. She had grown used to being overlooked, dismissed, judged by her job rather than her worth. The truth was that Ivy carried something no one expected. Beneath the baseball cap and delivery jacket lived a sharp mind, a quiet fire that refused to die, no matter how many times the world tried to smother it. That evening, the order slip led her to a towering skyscraper of steel and glass. Caldwell Enterprises, one of the largest tech companies in the city. It was the kind of place she'd only seen on television, a place of power, wealth, and people who would never imagine speaking to someone like her. As she entered the lobby, Ivy immediately sensed something unusual. Phones rang frantically, employees rushed back and forth with panic in their eyes, and security guards muttered into radios. The atmosphere wasn't just busy, it was chaotic, desperate. Clutching the warm pizza box to her chest, she followed the instructions on the slip and stepped into the elevator. As the numbers climbed higher, her heart pounded. She hated these moments, the awkward knock on a door, the fleeting glance, the impatient exchange of food for money. Yet this time felt different. She couldn't explain why, but she sensed she was walking into something more than just a delivery. When the elevator doors opened, Ivy stepped into pure chaos. Dozens of screens flashed red error messages, and groups of programmers sat frozen, their faces pale with fear. At the center of the storm stood Ethan Caldwell, the young and powerful CEO whose face she had seen on magazine covers. But tonight he didn't look powerful. He looked broken, surrounded by employees who seemed just as lost as he was. Ivy hesitated, then lifted the box slightly. Pizza delivery for Mr. Cole. The laughter echoed across the office like cruel music. Ivy stood frozen in the middle of the chaos, the pizza box still in her hands, her dignity hanging by a thread. Every snicker, every mocking glance told her she didn't belong here. She was just the delivery girl, the outsider, the joke in someone else's tragedy. One of the programmers, a man with an expensive watch and arrogant grin, leaned forward in his chair. "Listen, sweetheart," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "This is a billion-dollar company under attack. People here have degrees from MIT and Stanford. You have, what, a scooter and an apron?" A scooter. The room chuckled again. Even Ethan, the CEO, pressed his fingers to his temples, too overwhelmed to care about the humiliation happening under his watch. Ivy's throat tightened, but she forced herself to breathe slowly. She wasn't new to insults. Life had thrown worse at her. Still, something inside her stirred, a stubborn defiance that had carried her through long nights and harder days. She set the pizza box on the nearest desk, straightened her back, and spoke with a calm she didn't feel. "Degrees don't always mean answers," she said firmly. "Sometimes the right solution comes from someone you'd never expect." The arrogant programmer scoffed. "Oh, really? And what would you know about complex network security, pizza girl?" Ivy glanced at the screens behind him. Streams of corrupted code flashed in red, firewalls collapsing one after another. Her eyes moved quickly, reading the errors, tracing the attack. To her, the chaos made sense. She could see the gaps, the logic of whoever was behind it. "Whoever's doing this," she said, her voice steady, "isn't just crashing your system. They're mapping your weak spots, testing every door until one stays open. And from the looks of it, they've already found the back entrance." The programmer froze. His smirk faltered. He turned to his monitor, scanning the code as if trying to prove her wrong. But he couldn't. Ethan lifted his head slowly, his sharp eyes narrowing at Ivy. For the first time, he looked at her not as an annoyance, but as someone who might actually understand what was happening. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. Ivy held his gaze. Just someone who's been underestimated her whole life. The room grew tense. The laughter faded. Whispers rippled through the programmers like a current of disbelief. Ethan took a step toward her, searching her expression for arrogance, for a lie, for anything that would expose her words as empty bravado. But all he saw was conviction. For a man drowning in failure, conviction was more valuable than gold. He exhaled slowly. "If you're serious, then prove it." The arrogant programmer jumped to his feet. "You can't be considering this. She's a delivery girl, for God's sake." But Ethan silenced him with a glare. Desperation left no room for pride. He gestured to an empty workstation, his voice low but firm. "Sit down, show me what you see." The office went quiet. Dozens of eyes followed Ivy as she moved toward the desk, each step heavy with the weight of doubt and mockery. She could feel their stares on her back, their whispers clinging to her like shadows. She lowered herself into the chair, adjusted the keyboard, and placed her hands over the keys. Her pulse quickened, not from fear of failure, but from something far more dangerous: hope. This was her chance to prove them all wrong. The chair felt strange beneath Ivy, far heavier than the scooter seat she was used to. Dozens of eyes bore down on her, waiting for her to fail. The arrogance in the room was thick, but beneath it, she could sense something else: fear. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. She inhaled slowly, then began to type. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, her eyes scanning them with precision, her mind tracing paths most of the others had overlooked. Within seconds, she saw it. A breach hidden in plain sight, buried beneath endless layers of corrupted files. A clever trap, designed to distract and exhaust anyone searching for it. To most, it looked like noise. To Ivy, it was a signature. "There," she murmured, pointing to a cluster of red errors. "That's not random, it's deliberate. They're using a shadow protocol to reroute your defenses, keeping you busy while they strip your core database." The room went silent. Programmers leaned closer, confusion flickering in their eyes. One of them checked his own terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard, then froze. She's right." The arrogant man who had mocked her earlier laughed nervously. "Beginner's luck. Anyone could have spotted that." "No," another programmer interrupted, his voice trembling. "We've been staring at this for 6 hours. None of us saw it." Ethan Caldwell stepped closer, his sharp eyes locked on Ivy. "What can you do about it?" Ivy didn't hesitate. "Patch the loop they created, redirect the false stream, and cut them off before they tunnel deeper." The arrogant programmer shook his head violently. "That's impossible. You'll crash the entire network if you touch that cluster. It's too risky." But Ethan ignored him. "Do it." Gasps echoed through the room. To trust a delivery girl over his entire team? It was madness. Yet desperation had made Ethan reckless, and Ivy's quiet certainty was the only thing keeping him afloat. Her fingers moved faster now, dancing across the keys with a rhythm only she understood. She bypassed layers of corrupted code, rewriting, redirecting, weaving a countermeasure with the ease of someone who had lived inside this world before. Then the screen flashed. The red flood slowed, paused, and for the first time in hours, the system stabilized. A stunned silence filled the room. Monitors beeped softly, signaling restored defenses. Ivy leaned back in the chair, her chest rising and falling with the adrenaline that rushed through her veins. "It's not over," she said quietly. "They'll be back. This was just their first strike." The programmers stared at her as though she had spoken in another language. And then Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire CEO who had nearly screamed her out of the building. The office had gone quiet after Ivy's intervention, but silence didn't mean acceptance. Whispers swirled around her, fragments of disbelief, suspicion, and even envy. She could feel the weight of every stare. To them, she was still just a pizza girl who had gotten lucky. Ethan stood behind her, his voice low but steady. "How did you know that pattern? No one here saw it." Ivy didn't look at him. Her eyes lingered on the fading red lines across the screen, the proof of her work dissolving into stability. "Because I've seen it before," she said softly. Her words stirred the air like a confession. Ethan frowned, about to ask more, but Ivy rose from the chair and grabbed the empty pizza box. "Your system is safe, for now. I should go." But before she reached the elevator, the arrogant programmer stepped in her path. His smirk was gone, replaced by venom. "Who are you really? You don't just walk in here, spout a few lines of code, and act like a hero. What's your game?" Ivy's fists tightened around the box. Memories she had buried long ago clawed their way to the surface. Nights spent in dimly lit rooms, surrounded by glowing monitors, her fingers dancing over keys until the sun came up. Challenges, competitions, battles fought in the hidden corners of the internet. Back then, she wasn't Ivy, the delivery girl. She had been someone else entirely, someone feared, someone respected. But that life had cost her everything, a betrayal, a mistake. When Ivy left the building that night, the city air felt heavier than usual. The neon lights of downtown reflected off wet sidewalks, and her scooter sputtered as she rode home through the dark. She told herself she had done the right thing walking away. She had delivered the pizza, saved their system, and that was enough, but deep down, she knew it wasn't over. By the next morning, the story had already spread. Whispers moved through the halls of Caldwell Enterprises like wildfire. The pizza girl, who had spotted what the programmers couldn't. Some employees laughed about it, some resented it, and others spoke of her with quiet awe. But one thing was clear, her presence had unsettled them all. Ethan called her personally that afternoon. His voice was calm but urgent. "They're back. The attack. Stronger this time. I need you here." Ivy gripped the phone tightly, her stomach twisting. She had promised herself never to step back into this world, and yet the pull was undeniable. When she returned to the office, the atmosphere was even darker than before. Screens flickered with violent streams of corrupted code. The programmers looked exhausted, their eyes hollow from sleepless hours, and standing in the middle of them all was the same arrogant man who had mocked her. His sneer was sharper now, his words harsher. "So the legend returns," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "What's the plan this time, pizza girl? Save the company with garlic bread?" Laughter broke out again, sharper this time, fueled not by amusement, but by jealousy. Ivy stood frozen for a moment, letting the humiliation wash over her like cold rain. Ethan stepped in. The night was heavy with silence when Ivy returned home. She tossed her jacket onto the couch, collapsed into the worn-out chair by the window, and stared at the city lights. Her fingers still tingled from the hours spent at the keyboard, fighting against an enemy she couldn't see. But the victory felt hollow. The threat embedded in the code haunted her. Whoever was behind the attack knew her, knew enough to leave a warning in plain sight. That wasn't just a hacker taunting a company. That was a predator hunting her. She tried to shake it off, telling herself she wouldn't go back again, but at dawn her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with an unknown number and a single text. "Still think you're a hero, pizza girl? Walk away, or we'll come for you." Her stomach twisted. It wasn't just code anymore, it was real. That afternoon, she was back at Caldwell Enterprises. She had almost turned the offer down, but Ethan's voice over the phone had been filled with something she couldn't ignore. Desperation. The company was bleeding, investors were circling like vultures, and he was running out of people to trust. As soon as she stepped off the elevator, the whispers started again. "There she is, the mascot. Let's see how long her luck lasts. Probably just staged the whole thing. Their words stung, but Ivy kept walking. She had endured worse. Ethan met her at the workstation, his eyes tired but steady. "They know you," he said quietly. "This isn't random anymore. Whoever's doing this, they're targeting you now." Ivy froze. "Why me?" He shook his head. "I don't." The fire from Ivy's scooter was quickly extinguished by security, but the message was clear. This was personal. She stood at the window of Caldwell Enterprises, watching the smoke drift into the night sky, her jaw clenched. Every laugh, every insult she had endured in that office suddenly felt small compared to the threat that now lingered outside. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted. Some employees looked at her with suspicion, others with fear. The arrogant programmer wasted no time exploiting it. "See?" he said loudly, pointing at her. "She brought this here. Ever since she walked in, the attacks have gotten worse. Maybe she's not saving us. Maybe she's feeding them." A murmur spread through the office. Heads turned. Doubt crept in. Ivy felt the heat of their stares, the silent accusations pressing down on her. "That's ridiculous," Ethan snapped, stepping forward. "She's the only reason we're still standing." But the damage was done. Ivy could feel the tide turning against her. Humiliation tightened around her like a noose, and for a moment she wanted to run, to leave the building and never come back. Then, on one of the main screens, a camera feed flickered to life. It wasn't code this time. It was a face, a woman's face, sharp and cold, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Hello, Ivy," the hacker said, her voice echoing through the speakers. "Did you really think you could hide from me?" The room froze. Every pair of eyes swung toward Ivy. The woman on the screen smirked. "For years, you've tried to bury who you are." The office was silent, except for the hum of servers and the steady tapping of Ivy's fingers. Every line of code she wrote was a weapon, every command a shield. She was no longer the pizza girl they had mocked. She was the fighter they had underestimated. The hacker struck back hard. Systems flickered, alarms blared, files vanished into black voids. On the screens, Ivy saw the enemy's signature, taunts hidden in corrupted strings. "You'll never win. You'll always be nothing." Her chest tightened, but she didn't stop. She had heard those words her entire life. Teachers, bosses, strangers, even friends. And every time she had swallowed the humiliation, let it weigh on her shoulders. Not tonight. "Redirect the ports," she whispered, fingers flying. "Block the false signals. Trap her where she thinks she's free." The arrogant programmer who had mocked her most loudly leaned over her shoulder, ready to sneer. But his jaw fell open as he realized what she was doing. She wasn't just defending the system, she was turning it into a cage. Lines of code folded in on themselves, locking tighter, narrowing the hacker's escape routes. On the central screen, the hacker's face reappeared, now twisted with fury. "No," she hissed. "You can't." Her voice cut out. The camera feed froze, then collapsed into static. Ivy's final keystroke sealed the trap. The system beeped. The attack was over. For a moment, silence reigned. The room was frozen, everyone staring at the girl in the faded delivery jacket who had just done the